Hi everyone, a very good evening to one and all. Hampi Center for Design welcomes you all. Today we have with us Pradeep Kambathalli hosting this webinar. Today's topic would be reflections from a journey within. So this will be a webinar which is put together by him on all the artworks and his journey throughout till now. A small brief on Pradeep Kambathalli. Pradeep Kambathalli is a Bangalore-based artist. He did his bachelor's with a specialization in sculpture from College of Fine Arts, Chitrakala Parishad in 2004, and did bridge course in art history as Faculty of Fine Arts, MS University, Baroda in the year 2006. He has exhibited his works in several group shows and curated shows across the country. He is an avid traveler and is passionate about teaching. He also has practiced in various sculpture symposiums, and his works exist in some prominent collections. Along with his art practice, he also works as a visiting faculty at SJB School of Architecture and Planning and at NIFT, Bangalore. So Pradeep, welcome to the webinar.
Yeah, hi there, everyone.
Yeah, so the stage is yours. You can start presenting today's webinar and take us through your journey.
So I'll be starting the presentation. I'll share the screen now. Why I've titled it as Reflections from a Journey Within is I've started this career of mine since 2004. So since 2004, it has been a very amazing, wonderful journey, what has happened. And this journey has given me a lot of realizations, understanding, and it's actually shown me a different perspective about life in itself. So I would actually want to call my artworks as reflections or glimpses from the journey which I've had till now. There was this whole period of excitement of starting a new career and the thrill of the narrative. So I've actually put together 2 or 3 works in this particular narrative, and I would want to call it the beginnings, like the beginnings of how my art career started and what was I fascinated with, and how I actually went about exploring things after my colleges. I've mixed all my works and I've got it together for you. Okay, so let's go with the first one. The title for this particular artwork was "The Interpreter Was Forced to Make Up a Story Explaining the Incorrect Information." So here, I was interested a lot in literature. So, I mean, literature actually gave me a big boost. It actually gave me a very good understanding of my visual vocabulary. So here you can see a lot of different elements, and there is a central protagonist character, and there is a lot of different gazes behind the character. You can see different types of eyes and different sizes of eyes, and there is something happening. So there is one narrative which is happening. So I wanted to have that fun, playing, that playfulness. That is why I thought, if an interpreter is forced to make up a story explaining incorrect information, what sort of a visual we can come up with? So there are lots of different symbolisms, and at this particular juncture, I used to love bright colors. So this is transparent Indian inks which I'm working with. So there is another, let's go to the next work where you can see a drastic change in the way in which I've used the colors. Here, this was in the later part of 2005. So here, after a point of working with colors, I got a little saturated of the same sort of a narrative which I was coming up. And there is a limitation as to the kind of colors what you work with, and the limitations come across from the medium as well. So the applications and all that. So I was trying to kind of trying to represent solitude over here. So this jumbled up geometric shapes and forms is supposedly a representation of a city. The city is exactly not in color, it's just as lines, just in black and white. So I was trying to represent a culminated solitude, that loneliness which comes. There is one sort of a melancholic loneliness after a point, you start noticing, which is dragging along with you as a shadow. So I wanted to actually try and see how I can, like, visualize it in a poetic way. So what I thought was, a celebration is happening. It's happening beyond the city and not within the city, and it looks beautiful and colorful. There is explosion. There is explosion of colors, but strangely it is silent. That's why I titled it Interpretations of the Outsized Reality. So I'm talking about different layers of reality in this particular artwork. And I would want to call it the settling in stage. So this happened in the years 2007 and in 2008, where after participating in some group shows, after moving about in different cities, because but by this time I also had studied in Baroda. I had done my bridge course in artistry. So there was the once you move away from your hometown, your city, your place, and go and start observing other places, other cultures, other languages, there is some idea of the grand narrative of our country coming into my identity itself. Because this is a time I've been seeing, there is so many ways of doing the same thing, and there is so many ways of interpretation, and people have structured their lives in many different ways. There are many different designs, there are many different cities, and I had been exhibiting in cities like Delhi, Bombay. Okay, so this is a painting which I did, I mean, very painstakingly did, because I wanted to mimic technology here. So, and it's titled also in a very interesting way. It's called "If You Can Say What You Can Say, Then I Can Say What You Can Say." So basically, what I've done is I've actually taken a statement by a philosopher called Ludwig Wittgenstein, and I've made it the title of my painting. So this is my self-portrait, myself, which was photograph is like, I actually took several photographs of myself screaming, and then try to transpose it on paper. And this is actually acrylic on canvas. This is 60 inches by 72 inches, that is 5 by 6 feet. And this is the time I was pushing myself to the limits, where I wanted to mimic technology and be better uh, than that. I mean, this was the time when I thought I should do it, and I wanted to make things in a huge, larger scale. So what I've done is, as I told you, one that is, there were certain ideological transcripts you can go ahead and see here. The way in which the composition is done, it's a very, what you can say, it's something like a propaganda painting. Okay, so here it's me and myself trying to actually put forward my propaganda, and also, in other words, trying to understand Ludwig Wittgenstein's statement, that is, if you can say what you can say, then I can say what you can say. See, here Ludwig Wittgenstein was a philosopher who was quite some bit interested in understanding the root nature of language, because he believed that there are so many philosophical questions which can be answered if we can understand the root nature of language in itself. So that is why this statement comes. And in this time, I was also quite some bit transfixed by the concepts of truth, concepts of reality, concepts of ideology, concepts of, this higher realm of logic, and all that. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger. So this is 60 inches by 84 inches. And again, this is called Man is a Useless Passion. This itself is another statement by this philosopher called Jean-Paul Sartre. Here you can see this is myself again. I used to collect Che Guevara t-shirts, and because I saw this movie called Motorcycle Diaries when I was in my final year in my college, and Che Guevara and his motorcycle diaries influenced so much on me that I became a traveler like how he was at the beginning of his life. And so he was also an inspirational icon for me in many different cases. And this is me wearing a Che Guevara t-shirt and standing opposite a wall where Che Guevara's painting is done. And on the adjacent wall, you can see that you have this color tabs. And these are the color tabs which you can see when there is no signal in a television, especially when we had color television. Whenever there was no signal, we could see this. So I'm here standing in a room with actually open sky. There is no clouds, nothing is there. So even the presence of life itself, that I've been reduced into a two-tone representation, just like my hero Che Guevara. And this is a photograph of mine drinking tea, and this is all happening within a space where there's nothing, there's no greenery, there's no life. And here I'm trying to connect the statement man is a useless passion by Sartre by actually talking about myself, like how passionate, how being passionate sometimes, in a different realm altogether. I'm talking about human conditions and ideology and stuff like that. So I myself saw myself as a useless passion sometimes. And so many things which we would want to do, like to do, we are not able to do it, achieve it, due to so many different circumstances. So in the end, all the things what we want, sometimes we never can achieve a balance in it, right? So that's why I kind of titled it as "Man is a Useless Passion." Following Sartre, and you have that no signal tab which is happening, but yet there is a calm and composed Che Guevara staring to eternity. I'm not looking towards him, but I'm looking away from him. So it's like not answering a lot of questions is actually the content of my painting, whereas I want to pose more questions in other way. So this is another painting titled Spectacle of the Society. Again, this is quite a large painting. This is 60 inches by 72 inches. Here you can see people pushing a pedestal in an empty room, and there's an empty sky, no clouds, nothing. So this is they're just waiting for something to worship. So it is actually what we do in our own societies nowadays, what we witness. So it's more of actually, if someone comes up with a very interesting idea, instead of trying to implementing the idea, what we do is we put the person on a pedestal and worship the person rather than talking about what the person spoke. We've seen this happen to many of the Indian philosophers. They've been converted into something else altogether. So I don't have to go elaborately on this. So basically, it's people. They have a pedestal ready, they have a room, and they're just waiting for anything to come and sit on it. So that is the spectacle. So I'm talking about that spectacle. And the society is this closed, uh, walls, the red, bright walls, and you just move around the pedestal from here to there. Okay, so this is another work which I did. This was done on paper though. This is titled "Don't Criticize What You Don't Understand." Actually, this is if you're, if you have listened to Bob Dylan and some of his songs, there is one particular song called "Times They Are Changing." So this title is actually a line from that particular song. Don't criticize what you can't understand. So here, what is happening is I'm trying to look within because there is so many unanswered questions all around me, so many things which no one wants to talk about. But there are. n number of criticisms already happening. So here I'm trying to answer myself that don't criticize what you don't understand, try and accept it. But I also wanted to be playful at the same time, so I added a balloon towards the right hand side of the image, so to kind of balance out the composition in itself. So it's almost like you're free floating two human forms, which is just rising up, and you don't know what exactly the background is. Is it stars? Is it molecules? What is it? We don't know. So there's no exact answers, but I'm trying to actually connect to the soul of the matter. Okay, so let me go to the next one. So from 2004 till 2008, so this is my journey till now. It's not that I have not done any sculpture in between. I also was invited for many different artist camps and symposiums during this time. But I thought these artworks represent a journey better, so I've used them. Okay, so now I would want to go to another important aspect of my career, that is the aspect where I actually traveled. And this happened quite a bit by accident, because this was a time when I started selling my artworks, and also this was a time I was able to afford a good vehicle. I mean, I bought a Royal Enfield Bullet this time, and then since I was there was no binding, or there's nothing for me to actually hold me into one place. Just started traveling. I mean, this started with a group of friends, then it became solitary travels. There was not exactly one particular way in which I used to do things, but I used to just look at maps and then see any interesting names over there. Then I will be like, okay, fine, let me go to this place. So, but I also had this understanding that why I'm doing this is I wanted to understand the country better. I wanted to understand the people better, because especially living in urban, heavily urbanized place, no, so many things are taken for granted, especially, and you don't learn a lot about people or their culture or their meanings, or about their lives. So, but you doing travels, I mean, you are exposed to something completely different, and also traveling kind of gives you a realization of exactly who you are, what are your limits, how can you push your limits, and all that. So this is something which I liked about traveling. And I never used to stay in hotels and stuff like that, so I just used to explore. So, also another part of my exploration was to document my understandings. So I found it very difficult in the beginning, because I could not follow a particular set standard, because each place was different, each geography was different, each culture was different, the kind of people whom I used to meet were different, the places I was staying was different. So I did not know like how to put everything together. But I think by 2009, I had this idea of taking a sketchbook everywhere and then documenting things, and symbolically documenting, because so many times when you actually sit and try and sketch and try and replicate what you're seeing in front of your eyes, the layers behind it actually completely vanishes. You are just getting a pretty picture. That's what I was doing. I used to do a lot of landscapes, I used to do portraits of people and all that. It's good, but to one extent it's nice, but what is missing out is the stories behind those people. If we just do a portrait, the stories is missing. So I was wondering how to capture that, how to capture that essence of a place. So I have many travelogues and sketchbooks which I have done through this time. But I think in 2009, I've got this particular set of images which actually represent my sketchbook from this particular place called Kanakamajalu. Okay, so Kanakamajalu is a very small, tiny village, which is in the borders of Karnataka and Kerala. So what had happened was there is a youth organization in Kanakamajulu who are very active. They actually showcase a lot of world cinema. They do a lot of theater, and they're very active in that particular area. So this was how I got that connection, and then I went and stayed in that person who was the president of that youth club. So what I've done here is I've actually tried to document the soul of that place, because that place was heavenly and beautiful. Okay, so this is how I used to wake up every morning amongst rubber trees. You know, beautiful it was. Um, it's like I would say it's like a sanctuary for writers and artists and architects and designers, because the kind of observation you can have there, devoid of people. Uh, okay, so yeah, sorry for that. I don't know how it happened. So, so basically, what I'm trying to say is, okay. So what I was trying to say was, the place was so beautiful, the landscape was so green, the geography was so amazing. It was not too hilly, but it was hilly. There was a lot of terrain. But what I could also see was there was strange tension in the air. Tension in terms of religion, tension in terms of caste. Okay, people don't talk about these things, but it exists. It exists in such a bad way, and we all actually try and fit ourselves into a very progressive societies. But when we see this happen, no, it is quite shocking, and I had to literally pick certain elements and try and represent those in my sketches. So I will explain it to you in the images coming down the line. Okay, this was the house I stayed in. So every day I used to wake up to different aromas of my friend's mother cooking for some of us. We are actually two of my friends had accompanied me here, and it was a very nice old traditional house and small house. So this is what the house looked like. So it was elevated from the ground, and it was all laterite based soil. So everything was red, and whenever it rained, you could see like the red becoming more over there, the this thing and everything. And I felt that there is one strange aroma which every day travels from the house and mixes into the atmosphere. But what was that aroma about? I didn't know. But I could see it, I could sense it, I could understand it. So I thought, let me just try and get that as a sketch. So all the images down the line, what you'll be seeing will be images from my sketchbook. So what I did was I carried one a new sketchbook for all my travels. So I have a collection of a lot of sketchbooks I've done. So this is my way of collecting things, because as a collector of narratives, I have to actually anchor myself in one particular place and try and get something out. And this was actually the toilet of the house, which was quite away from that main building, which was this. And the toilet was so close to that greenery. I mean, because beyond my friend's house, it was the forest land for a long, I think for I think 7 or 8 kilometers. There was nothing, and my God, it was so noisy. So it felt as if the house, which was kind of alienated from the greenery, which stood in a field, was as a very dignified individual. But this building, which was so close to the greenery and the forest background, actually felt as if it kind of conspirated with the forest and was so talkative. and it was telling things upon things upon things, and because of that noise, I mean the noise of these insects, especially that crickets, those things, it felt as if tractor is going next to you. It was that loud. So in my imagination, I kind of gave a mouth and a nose to the toilet, and it's talking out loud with stars coming out, like, everywhere. They are the snippets of conversations. So next one. So this was the neighbor story of the neighbor of this guy. I mean, the friend whose house I stayed in was Lakshmi Narayan Kajagade. So this guy was his neighbor, and he had this luggage auto rickshaw at that time. And I don't know, he saw us artists as some sort of strange creatures, because he used to come and he used to just open up every evening. We used to just hang around near a tea stall, and then he'll finish his work and he'll come and talk about. He thought we are, I don't know, maybe in other words, maybe we might have done some kind of counseling or something, but he used to kind of search for us, come, give us all tea, and then talk about things, and then generally those things would end up in talking about himself, his life, his aspirations. So this is his aspirations, how, according to him, the way in which he did things in his life was a miracle. And for him, buying the auto rickshaw itself was something which he could not think of. So that thing used to be the bread and butter of his life. That is why you can see the, instead of tires you have hands. It's like, it's literally controlling his life. And yeah, and his dreams and aspirations were so innocent, so pure. And I used to think that, okay, soaring in the sky with a cloud full of dreams. This is how I kind of put it all together as a visual image. Yeah, this is the next one. This is actually representing the Arcanut trees over there. So this geography, there was two things in that village which they did a lot. That is growing Arcanut and rubber. So this was the economy of the village. So everything depended on how much produce they could get out of these two. And most of the villagers, they just didn't see Arcanut trees as a living thing. They just saw them as bundles of notes and coins, which is trapped, which is just there for them to get. So it was very strange, because for me they were trees, they were living things, but for them it actually represented so many things. It represented loans to be paid, it represented land to be bought, it represented marriage of the daughter, it represented education of the son, it represented treatment of cancer. So I felt so strange, because me coming from a very urbanized place, seeing these things, and I feel it's so exotic. But those guys, they were born and brought up there, and they saw it in a completely different way. So I was kind of fascinated with this. So this is the straight lines, the black lines are actually the stalk of the tree, the trunk, and the stars are actually those conversations the trees are having with you. So these are all representation of the Arcanut trees. Um, yeah, next. Yeah, so I think this was one of my good sketch over there, which I was not able to explain to them, because what happened was I saw them as all farmers, like so joined with nature. I mean, almost inseparable. But due to the social conditioning, or what we can say as today's globalized context, we can see intolerance building up in so many different levels. Intolerance against religion, intolerance against certain kind of expression. There is so much, right? So I could see that this green guy is actually the farmer, and that black patch is the road, and those are the mountains far beyond. This is a very beautiful place. But the moment you lift the road, there are so many things ready to explode. That has been represented by crackers. They're just there. You just have to light one, and it'll be like a chain reaction. It'll start exploding on top of each other. So that's something which I wanted to actually show. So that is what this image is talking about. But yet, in his heart, he's got heart within a heart. So he's a large-hearted person, but he's again fallen prey to that social conditioning, and that's what is happening. Even though we have such beautiful things in life, I don't think we know how to enjoy it. Someone will have to come and teach us that, maybe. I don't know. That's what I'm trying to say in this. Yeah, this is actually a tool which they use to make grooves on the rubber tree's bark, so that every morning they make that mark and then they collect that liquid. So the tool was so fascinating. It was so small, so handheld. It actually looked like a living thing. So, and everyone had this. Like, it was amazing. Like, if there is like three people walking in the road, out of three, two would actually have it in their somewhere near to pocket, or they would be carrying it or something, because everyone did that in the morning and then they carried around with other work. So I saw that as an animal, as a being in itself. So I've drawn it like this. And yeah. So this is the time when I ran out of pages, because I did so many drawings over there in a period of a week's time, that two sketchbooks were finished. So I did not want to even waste the backing cardboard of that sketchbook. So this is again my friend's neighbor, who actually owns that auto rickshaw and who plans to do his livelihood. And then but there is a lot of challenges he faces, so which he continually used to come and talk with us and all that. So this is him, and this is his auto rickshaw, and then this is that crackers which are ready to explode in the road. And then there is this great snake which is there. Snake is the representation of that great unknown. You don't know how to tread forward, and you try to tread forward through the auto rickshaw, but seems like three four, I mean, you just dismantle the crackers here and there, but you don't know this, you're not sure of how to go ahead. So even the flagpole actually talks about two different directions. Nothing is certain. So it's actually, it's somewhat kind of, a lot of elements from this is biographical in nature, because it's literally transliteration of those things this guy used to tell us. And yeah, so these were my documentations. So what I used to do was, I used to document such kind of stuff, and then come back in my studio. I used to patiently, over weeks of time, go through these images and then come up with the idea for a larger narrative. Because me as a person, as an artist, I actually am fascinated with the concept of absurdity. And absurdity is kind of given the core identity to my artworks in many different ways. So to actually nurture this and make the absurdness in these artworks better, so what I used to do was, I used to document my experiences like this. I stopped actually doing landscape paintings and doing portraits and sketches, because I thought it is actually nothing but doing the job of a camera. But here, I thought I was trying to capture the soul of that place, soul of that culture, soul of that people. So I thought this was more closer to the heart than actual realistic drawings. So slowly, the realism also gives way to more minimalism, which you'll be seeing it in coming works. Okay, so here in this particular images which are put together, I want to talk about the absurd, and I've also subtitled it as "We the People: Our Untold Stories." So whenever I want to talk about absurd, the first thing what I would want to say was the influence from literature. So I have great inspirations. I mean, from surreal literature. I mean, I was a big fan of Vaikom Muhammad Bashir. I'm a big fan of writers like Zakaria. I mean, I'm talking about Malayalam writers, and because I had read their translated stories, and then I suddenly realized that they see the world in a completely different way. Even though I'm next to them and we both are seeing the same event happening, their narrative would be so interesting because of their observation. And how do they do it? I wanted to actually especially like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Italo Calvino. I wanted to be able to be as simple as them, but the same way try to be as powerful as them as well. So I've done some more documentation of my observation of people around me. So I'll be showing it to you. So till now we've actually come from 2004 to 2010. So the works have changed a little bit in this particular juncture. So here what I've got is I used to do this rapid sketching thing. I used to make these drawings in this random papers I used to get and then put it on the wall. And this is all nothing but somehow transliterated from the people I've met or the characters in the stories I've read and things like that. So I wanted to actually make a large body of work called Beyond Roti Kapda and Makan. Because the whole context of Roti Kapda and Makan being the staple for living, I thought absurdity played a larger life, especially in the Indian narrative. So I thought beyond Roti Kapda and Makan. So these are not one single people. I mean, even though you might see one character over there, there might be culmination of three or four different people's identities over here. So for here, you can see that there is this guy who's put all his dreams and aspirations in a bottle, tightened it, and is actually aramse sleeping on it. Okay, so there is no one explanation for that. That can also become something different. So there's nothing beyond him. Everything is under him. There's clouds, stars, sky, everything is under him. There's nothing beyond. So it's like different metaphor for so many different things. And let me just go through these images. You can have a good understanding. So there is this another image where a guy who is farting stars, and there's also a guy who exists who catches them. And so this is, I mean, I'm trying to get that absurd in different realms altogether. And he's pushing a shopping cart, there's nothing in it. Where is he doing all that? On an empty vacuum. Yet there is skates on his feet, which shows that he's traveling. His travel is smooth, and there is some vessel attached to his nose. He's wearing a helmet, and he's farting out stars. And there is a guy who is coming from under the ground, and then he's having this net in his hand and catching his stars. So there is no reason for this to exist, but I'm trying to make up these kind of stories, where I also wanted to make the viewer see this and like what exactly is happening. And I'm also trying to talk about things which we don't talk about. I mean, there are so many beautiful things which we all know, and we talk about it, we criticize it, we critique it, we have discourses on it. But these are some things which I don't think anyone wants to talk. I mean, maybe a guy would have farted in a bus stand when you were sitting. We don't discuss that stuff. So I'm actually trying to get those kind of characters here and making them protagonists of my stories. Yeah. So, and yeah, there is a human barbecue happening over here, and the central character is actually speaking out loud. And what he's speaking out loud is actually nothing but nails. So, there is a guy in the sky who is trying to gather those nails together. And in the syntax tank below, the water is boiling. So, these are things which are like, they never can come together at any single point. So, I'm trying to get them as a narrative. Okay, so we have different pedestals and you have different people doing a lot of different things. So there's no general meaning over here, but they don't necessarily represent a particular thing. They just exist. Like how some people just exist without certain things. These characters also, they're just existing, doing their own stuff. And this gave me a big liberation from actually trying to source out my narratives in a way in which it has to be understood always. It has to be seen at a particular way. There has to be some sort of a political identity, personal identity, social identity involved in all the things you do. But here, they are just things who exist in a realm. That's it. Nothing more than that. Okay, so again, you have this crazy characters who are trying to do something. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to blast a seat or a sofa. And what is that sofa doing? It's just there in front of a television set. And these are some things which I've seen. They have completely vanished. The television antenna, the television which was so dimensional in nature. I mean, we used to have this color TVs, huge ones, which occupied so much space, and now they don't exist anymore. At one point in my life, when I was growing up, it was a very important thing, and now they're just so flat. You can just put them on a wall, slightly thicker than paper. That's it. And how things have changed, and all these people, also the characters, well, so I've tried to capture that kind of a absurd happening which happens for no meaning or doesn't have a reason for its existence, like these sketches. Okay, so uh, we come to the ending part of 2010, where I started experimenting something like this on a large scale. This is, I would say, in artists' terms, it is called as full imperial size. That is 40 inches by 28 inches. So this is almost the size of the board of our architecture drafting tables. So what I'm trying to show here is something strange, something maybe repulsive, maybe something which is fascinating. You don't know what exactly happened, what that creature is. That what question remains in your mind because it doesn't get answered. Here you can actually see so many buildings are there. So, but one thing you don't see is the human presence in it. They all look empty. And what you can see is this great creature. We don't know whether it's an insect or a bird, but something has happened to it and some sort of an explosion has happened to it. And it's kind of frozen. The time seems to be frozen. So I've titled this as qualia. Qualia is actually a terminology which is used to represent our subjective understanding of the world or certain concept. It's basically talking about the empirical way of understanding things. Uh, yeah, so that is, I mean, here there's a depth of our subjective way of seeing the world. Okay, so there is many things happening in this artwork. This also is quite big in size. Unlike other artworks, this I've done it on a board paper. So this is an acid-free board paper. So it's like the backing board which you get in your sketchbooks, but in a huge size. So I've titled this as Within the Margins of the Believable, because here I'm trying to connect what is reality, what is believable, and what is the extent of believable. All those things together in one form. And you can also see that crackers, that so many of them, that they are actually coming from that sketchbook which I showed you. So I kind of use elements from my sketchbook in my artworks again and again. So there is different things happening here. If you look at this particular part, there is a syntax tank, and then here it looks like an interior of a house. You have calendar, you have this thing, a umbrella put together. You have a lamp, and you have a glass which is chain. You can see the chain and nailed to the wall. You have a pipe. A guy is actually filling water in it. And slowly you come here, you can see a wash basin, this first aid box, a mirror, and things put together, a shelf, a speaker, tube light. And here suddenly you see a guy. What is he doing? He's driving a truck. And he's trying to stop that truck. He's putting the legs on the clutch and the accelerator, the brake on the same time. You can see the dials, you can see the interior of the truck here. So what is happening here is the central emphasis is through this character, through the eyes of the driver, and what is he seeing outside happening outside his truck, half constructed thing, and snakes have gone everywhere. They've kind of occupied everything. There is this bucket which the snake is trying to swallow here, and there is this statue of this guy playing this instrument. The snake is on him, and there is this guy who is actually whose head is a cuboid. I was trying to sit on a snake and trying to ride it. And then there is this tractor here, which is again enveloped by a snake. And if you can see, there is a lot of different elements in between those crackers. So this snake represents the strange fears, the fears of the unknown, fears of tomorrow. And there is this guy who is trying to, he's like that Pied Piper. He's trying to get the attention of snakes and stuff like that. So there's no relationship between that interior of a truck to how it is becoming like a building, and then you can see that it has got another basement over here, and then there's another two-story building next to it, three-story building next to it. So the scale is different. So that's the thing with absurdity, you get to play a lot with a composition. And sometimes I believe that you also can get away with a lot of loopholes in creating artwork. But I think I took a lot of time. I must have taken around 12 continuous days to finish this, continuously, in the sense I was doing nothing else but doing this apart from eating and sleeping. I mean, sleeping also for what, 1 or 2 hours, because I was so excited to finish this off. Yeah, this is called the margins of the believable. Okay, let's go into the next juncture now. Okay, here in 2010, I was able to actually create a work in stone, which was the biggest I'd ever done till now, and I was so immensely happy with it. So this, I could say, that was my first stone sculpture, which I was not ashamed to show it to people. And this thing weighed 7.5 tons. And this was done in a sculpture symposium which was organized by BDA, that is Bangalore Development Authority. And this is actually part of the sculpture park, which is there in front of Turalli mountain in Banchankri, 6th or 7th stage, I think. This is in between Kanakpura Road and Mysore Road. That's where you get this. So I titled it The Beginning of the End. So this is my sculpture, which is standing on the pedestal. So the dimensions of this sculpture is 79 inches into 58 inches into 37 inches. So, and this was really heavy, like 7.5 tons. So what I've done here is, I've because the stones which we were given were so weirdly shaped, I got something which was so conical in nature. I didn't know like what to do with that stone, because generally when you actually ask for a stone, you are given something like this, which is either a cube or a cuboid. But here, since the arrangement of the workshop was from the government, and there was a lot of paperwork issues which happened, because most of the quarries at that particular time were illegal, and the government wanted to do everything in a legal way. So they could only get one particular quarry in HD Kote who had all the papers right. And but the thing with that quarry was, no stone was exactly as a cuboid. It was a small quarry, so he used to break rocks and give it to us, like literally. So this was some stone called as the basalt. It's, you can say, it's a cousin of granite. It's actually softer, but it's way more denser than granite and it's way more heavier than granite. And since it is soft, it's easier to carve. There is a lot of possibilities. So what I've done is, in a three-dimensional stone, I've tried to do something like very two-dimensional in nature. You can see a built environment over there, a lot of houses, and something is swallowing the houses. So here I used elements from traditional Indian sculpture. So this is called as Kirtimukha or Vyali, or even in certain aspects it's called as Nasi. So what exactly this creature does is, it is there in the uh, where the Prabhavali or the aura which is sculpted on the sculpture starts. So the no one shows the lower jaw of this creature. This is a mythical creature basically, because the lower jaw is so big. It is said to be so big that it encompasses the whole world. It is swallowing everything. So it's actually nothing but it's a very beautiful symbolic signifier of time. Time swallows everything, right? So I called this the beginning of the end. So something is swallowing everything what we have done, we've achieved. So another image from the frontal side. So you can see the details of that traditional creature. It's quite interesting. What I've done is I've carved it and I've actually put two stars on it. So I mean, it was quite playful. It also represents lots of different things. Yeah. So this was, I mean, I would say, even though I learned sculpture as specialization, it was during this doing this artwork that I actually learned what is stone carving. Even though I had done it before, I had not done it in this scale. So this was my first good stone sculpture after a long time. That is from 2004 to 2000. This was done in 2010. So the back part of the sculpture. Here I actually wrote a small text in Kannada. It's like a haiku. It just says Nanu, Nanna Mane, Nanna Jana, Nanna Jagattu. So that means its first sentence is me, second is my house, third is my people, and fourth is my world. So this is about the whole context of how sometimes we can be selfless and sometimes we can be selfish. We always think of things which all are around us and in relationship with our identity itself. So I'm trying to kind of communicate on that. And there is this creature who is coming up and then swallowing everything which you call as your own. So that's what I'm trying to tell over here. Okay, so this juncture, I would want to call it living to tell the tale. Because here I've been influenced so much from the genre of literature that I'll be actually explaining as and when I study the works. And Living to Tell the Tale is actually the title of the autobiography of Gabriel Garcia Marquez. So I'm trying to somewhere place myself next to him, even though I know I can't and I should not. But somewhere, as ode to him, like I'm trying to say things like how he has told. So that is why that living to tell the tale. That's how I used it. Okay, so here uh, in this particular time, I got a small book. I mean, I didn't get it. I actually found it um, of a small book which was translation of Kabir's couplets by Rabindranath Tagore. And that book was a game changer in the way in which I thought I could actually represent and understand things. So there is one small couplet by Kabir in that beautifully translated by Tagore. It goes like this: makeshift man, witless and weightless, a red flower without fragrance. So here there is so much things happening as layers. So after reading this, I used to actually try and draw, makeshift man. I mean, I'm talking about the folly of men. And you can see I'm trying to playfully represent it, like making men look like jokers. And then, flowers are growing from their ashes. So, and they don't know what to do about it. So they're going about, and then there are so many things. And there is some strange creature over here who's spitting out things. You can see a umbrella, light bulb, cherries, tomatoes, sickles, fishes, and then crackers, and then they're spreading around. And this is that strange flower which seems to bloom in all this absurdity. So that red flower without fragrance, and the makeshift man. That is, I'm talking about the corn of man. So, yeah, it's talking about as a symbolic metaphor for our lives, for our relative realities itself. Okay, so another drawing from this time, a phenomenon on a road less traveled. So, yeah, you know, there are these two heads which is seemingly lying on the ground. One head is too happy and one head looks little perplexed, but both of them have thought so much that their brains have turned into gobar, manure, and flowers are growing from their heads. And those flowers are attracting butterflies. And this is seen by two people who are traveling that road less traveled. And that one person is a woman who does not have legs, and the other person is a man who is actually taking a huge rock on his back. So this is what I actually came up with as the absurdity of a narrative. So this is quite interesting. This is not something which you would want to see on a journey, but so a phenomenon on a road less traveled. I think. Okay, here is another artwork which I've titled on Kabir only. That is Jako Rake Sayan Mar Sake Na Koi. The one who has blessings, nothing can be done of him. But here, it's the context is completely changed. These two characters are fighting. They're supposed to be twins, and they're fighting for their memories. And butterflies are trying to stop them fight, yet they're fighting. And their memories are represented by snapshots of people. They're claiming people, but it's so strange. They grew up together as children in the same family, and now they've come to a juncture where they have to fight for their memories. So I thought how strange it might be, like, two twins fighting for their own people. So I've made them look almost as if they are cops or police. So the footwear and everything represents that. And the fact that I wanted butterflies to be these creatures to make them stop fighting, even though they can't, they're trying. So these are some aspects which have come as a big influence from the genre of magical realism. So especially these butterflies trying to do things, trying to stop people from doing things, trying to intrude in human activity is coming from Gabriel Garcia Marquez's 100 Years of Solitude. Okay, this is another artwork. It is 30 inches by 22 inches. This is called Hero. So this is basically a pencil drawing on a large paper where I've represented a cop who's about to thrash a young chap. They're immortalized as sculpture. We don't know whether the slap actually happened or not. So, and this sculpture is actually in a field of flowers where there's no one, So it's a huge sculpture. It's I titled this as Hero. We don't know who the hero was. Was it the policeman or the young chap? So that this thing is there. Okay. This is another detailed pen drawing. This I titled it as The Joke of the Comrades, and this was actually exhibited in the Sri Lanka Biennale in 2014, which was curated by Suresh Jairam, who's a Bangalore-based art historian and art critic. So this is those soldiers from Wagah border, right? So I've actually taken them, and there is the rustle of leaves in between them, and through that rustle of leaves, a truck is escaping, and it's escaped to such an extent that it's deteriorating, it's deconstructed itself, it's becoming threads, the lines. So someone has to weave it again. So that's how I titled it as The Joke of the Comrades. So let me go. Yeah. Okay, so this I want to show another stone sculpture. This was much heavier than the work which I did earlier. So this weighed 9.25 tons, this one. And this was done in the same stone as what I showed you earlier. So this measurement of this sculpture, which is titled To Gather Together in My Name, is 68 inches into 46 inches into 49 inches. So this is quite big. So here you can see a lot of people trying to do a lot of different things over here. But the moment you go around the artwork, you can see that there is this huge person trying to gather everything together. So that is why To Gather Together in My Name comes. Okay, so in 2012, what happened was I came back to drawing like in a very vigorous and intensive way, and I started exploring image making beyond the context of art. We were very much stuck between art and the gallery system, and then patronage systems and all that. So I was trying to see if some experimentation can happen in any which way. Okay, so in this time I was part of this exchange program from India and Sri Lanka, where two Indian artists go to Sri Lanka and Sri Lankan artists come to India, and all of them come together. Four of them come together in a place and they make a show. So this show was titled Mountains, Myths and Metaphors. And the curatorial note spoke about the myths which we share between two countries. This was something which I did. So I thought of using the image of Hanuman as a carrier, not in a very religious way, but in a way in which, what do you say, as a carrier of meanings. So here he's carrying a mountain, but there is no Sanjeevani at all. There is only buildings, buildings, and buildings. And in between that buildings, there is a guy pushing the stone between. So this was called The Wonders of Creation and the Curiosities of Existence. Yeah, this was the display sequence where it was actually shown as digital prints. So my artworks consisted of one big drawing and six small prints. So here I've actually, seeing Hanuman as a earth mover. In the first image, he's actually taking a camouflaged mountain. In the second image, he's literally taking a earth mover. And in third image, he's actually taking a earth mover filled with clouds. So Hanuman doing different things, that was what I was trying to work around with. So this was the show in which it was titled as Mountains, Myths and Metaphors. Okay, so I think I will end it here because I have actually showed you different ways in which I worked through time. I mean, this is only a small percentage of works done by me.
That was a beautiful journey of your artist life, I think, after college, and how you faced different stages in life, and it was really interesting to see. I don't know. We can say varied interests in artistic expression. So it was a very nice journey. I think we felt like we were in the journey with you. So it was really amazing. Thank you so much for letting us in that little journey of yours.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Pradeep, for being with us today, sparing your time and sharing all your work with us.
Yeah, same here. Thank you.
Thank you.